Hello and welcome everyone to WinesOfItaly LiveStream. Today again, well, it's been a lot. So Saturday we had another producer from Campania, Milena Pepe, and today we're going to Campania again, but in another area, which is close to Caserta. And today I have Massimo. How do you say it, Alois or Alois?
Actually, it used to be Alois because it's a French family, but
Yes,
in Italy
yes.
it's Alois.
Ah, okay.
So if you want to pronounce, in the French way, it's Alois, but we
Alois.
prefer
Okay.
Alois. We are Italians.
Okay. So today we're going to talk to Massimo to learn more about the wines produced in the area around Caserta, which is a lesser known area than the other terroirs in Campania. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them, and then I will show them on the screen and ask them to Massimo. So welcome, Massimo. Do you want to present yourself a bit, who you are?
Yeah.
Your winery?
Okay. So let me just tell you, thank you for inviting me. And I'm so proud, of course, to present my region. And especially Caserta, which is northern Campania. So the region where we are is Campania, and the capital, the main city in Campania is Naples. And it used to be a capital because Naples has always been the capital of the Regno delle Due Sicilie, which is the kingdom of two Sicily. And this is the reason why Naples was the center of southern Italy. And Caserta was a kind of doorway from the center north to down south, because Caserta is northern Naples. It's just on the border between Lazio and Campania. And whoever wants to come to the south needs to get through Caserta. So our region was pretty renowned because the viticulture started with the Romans. In his big encyclopedia, Pliny the Elder, who is a pretty famous historian, who wrote this big book about geography, food and wine. In chapter 14, he mentions the three Grand Cru of Campania. We have Falernum, Caulinum, and Trebulanum. And Trebulanum is the area where we are. So that means that the Romans were cultivating grapes at the time. Tell me.
Ciao Francesco, sarà un tuo amico.
Francesco is a friend of ours. He's a close friend of ours. He's a winemaker. He's a viticulture, as well. And they are in the Avellino area, in Montefalcione. They make marvelous wines. The label is called Donna Chiara. That's their wine. Okay. It's the Donna Chiara Winery. So yes, Francesco and his wife, they make wonderful wines, and they got the Tre Bicchieri every year. And they're pretty well represented all over the world. So
they're very much in the US now. I see everybody's drinking Donna Chiara.
Yeah. But it's the real ambassador of the winery is Ilaria.
Yes,
she's a wonderful girl, and she does a very good job in promoting her wines. No, so going back to Campania.
Yes.
Yeah. So the second thing I want to mention about history is that I want to make a leap, a big jump, from the area, the period of the Romans to the period of the Bourbon kings, the kings of, the French family was the Bourbons. They were kings in Spain and kings in southern Italy. And they reigned for 150 years almost. So these guys with Charles III have discovered Pompeii. And this is one of the reasons why they started to look back to history. And this is the reason why we switch from Baroque into Neoclassicism, because they started focusing on the classics, on the Roman Empire, on the Roman history. And the wine was very important for them as well, because these guys were related to the French, to the Austrians, and
Yeah.
especially the
To
French were
everybody.
making a marvelous job with the wines, and they couldn't
Yeah.
stand the fact that their cousins from France, they're coming with their own barrels, and and they couldn't do a good job, so they started planting different vineyards, and they came up to 11 different vineyards, because in the past they used to buy the grapes from their subjects, but then in order to make a good quality wine they started developing their own. And in the area of Caserta, where there's a huge palace, and I'm sure you, Katarina, you have been
Yes, the Reggio di
over, of
Caserta.
course. So the Reggio di Caserta, I invite you guys to come visit it. It's one of the, I would say, biggest uh, royal residencies that we have in Europe. It's as big as Versailles. Is or
So
more or less the same period.
it's also modeled on Versailles, no? For the garden at least.
Yeah, I mean the garden is huge. I invite you guys to go first to the garden. I mean the royal garden is just amazing. So there's the what we call the Italian garden, which is the Italian shaped kind of garden, which is pretty squared and pretty geometric. And then there is the English garden, which is kind of
Mm.
irregular. And the Queen Maria Carolina wanted, she hired a guy from England, Grafer, Sir Grafer, and he was a botanic. He came over and he started planting all these plants coming from the Middle East, coming from Northern Africa, and they're still there. A bunch of those trees. So besides the park, they planted their most renowned vineyard, which is called Vigna del Ventaglio, which was a fan-shaped vineyard, and Vigna del Ventaglio means fan vineyard,
Mm.
just because they planted 10 different rows with 10 different varietals. And two of these were the Pallagrello Bianco and Pallagrello Nero that we are talking, that we will be talking today.
Yes,
So
I have it
the
here.
bourbons, yeah, you have got that, and I've got the bottle here.
Yes,
So these the bourbons, um, long story short, they planted 11 different vineyards, and in 3 out of 11 vineyards they planted the Pallagrello Bianco and Pallagrello Nero. The others were all grapes coming from southern Italy, from Calabria, from Puglia, from Sicily, and a bunch of grapes from Campania. Um, Another thing I would like to mention is that in 1826, one of the king's, I would say, consultant, he wrote a report to the king saying, we are producing uh, 30 barrels out of this vineyard, which is San Silvestro, and the wine that we're making is mediocre. So this may sound a little awkward, a little weird, but I think it's not a negative, uh, assessment. It's not a negative statement, because that means and implies that these guys were actually trying to improve what they
yeah,
were doing. And they actually had a palate to distinguish something which is good, you know, from something which is not. So if you say that the wine is mediocre, that means that you know what a quality wine is, because you are drinking it and maybe you are already producing it. So I think starting from the late 1800, throughout the 1900, the Bourbon Kings have done a pretty amazing job in reviving all the indigenous varietals that the Romans were cultivating in northern Campania.
no, I agree. But Pallagrello was also their favorite wine, no? Or one of the Bourbon Kings.
Yeah, I mean, it was called the wine of the king because, as I was telling you, it was the wine that they planted in the Vigna del Ventaglio.
Mm. So it
And
was the wine closest at hand.
sorry?
So it was the wine they had the closest that they drank
Yeah,
more. Okay.
yeah. It was the wine that they planted the most because I told you they planted it in 3 different vineyards, and it was the favorite wine of Ferdinando IV, Francesco I, and Ferdinando II.
But then, yeah, I read about that. But then it kind of went forgotten, no, with the Philosopher, and then also in the 20th
Yeah,
century.
I would say two things. Number one, of course, phylloxera and a bunch of diseases which spread out all over Europe and southern Italy, starting from late 19th century and the 20th century. Just to be precise, we had the phylloxera at the beginning of last century here in the south. But before, when Italy was united, a bunch of the things that the Bourbon kings have done for the South have been forgotten.
Mm,
Um, I don't think the new kings intended to forget those things. I'm sure they were busy to do, I mean, to unify a state, a nation which was divided
yeah.
in different parts was not an easy job. So, and I'm saying that because I'm convinced. I don't want to appear as a neo-Bourbonic, you know, a pundit, but I'm sure they were busy doing a bunch of other things, and this is one of the reasons why all the vineyards were forgotten. Let me tell you one more thing. Even before the kings had to leave Italy in 1860, after the Presa di Gaeta, where they've been besieged, by the Piemontesi,
Mm,
even before the vineyards were kind of abandoned because they were so much involved in all the military activities and all the different revolutions that we have had in
there was a
Italy.
lot of cows in the 19th century also, so
Yeah,
a lot of other things going on.
yeah. So I think these two reasons made these indigenous grapes um, to become, unknown, forgotten, and abandoned grapes, which have been revived, I would say, 30 years ago.
Mm. Okay, so because you were, or you as a winery were involved with rediscovering the Pallagrello, no? Can you talk a bit about how and when people started reevaluating the grape again?
Yeah, so that happened in the 90s.
Okay.
In the 90s, there's been a revival about all the indigenous varietals. Here in Campania, we just had few other vineyards and grapes which have been revived, especially in the Irpinia and in the Vesuvio area and in the Campi Flegrei. But the varietals were Aglianico, Falanghina, Greco. All the others in Campania, we have got so many. In the Amalfi Coast, for example, we have Ginestra, Pepella,
Mm,
Fenile. So, I mean, there are a bunch spread all over. So in the 90s, there's been this kind of revival, and a bunch of people got involved. People who had nothing to do with the vineyards and with the wine. So let's say
mm,
journalists, professors, lawyers, and even peasants. I mean farmers and politicians. And my family got involved in that as well because my father in 1992 he planted 9 different varietals, all indigenous varietals that then we wind. They end up being bunch of those international varietals and not indigenous varietals at all. So, and he got involved in that because his father was always telling him that that here in Caserta, in the San Silvestro mountain, the hill in San Silvestro, which my family has run for more than 50 years, 60 years. there were a bunch of different varietals which were abandoned. And my grandfather was telling, my father all the time, we got to do something, we got to do something. No one did anything anyway. So in the 90s, my father planted all these indigenous varietals, and we ended up discovering that we found Mangiaguerra, Coda di Pecora, Pallagrello Bianco, Pallagrello Nero in Casavecchia. And then besides those, there was even Montepulciano, Merlot, and Trebbiano, which actually were not indigenous, but they developed, in the previous years here in Campania. So, and then I was telling you a bunch of other figures have been involved in this revival. There was I would say, the mayor of Ponte Latone. Ponte Latone is one of the 8 communes where we have the DOC appellation, and this guy Cutillo is a mozzarella maker. Alfonso Cutillo was one of those pioneer to believe in these varietals, and he started committing himself in this project. And then we have a bunch of other vintners. The Vestini Campagnano was another interesting winery, and they've been among those who really believed for the very first time in the capacity, of this potential of these grapes. Then we have Antonio Di Giovannantonio, who was at the time a student at University of Portici of Naples, and he graduated in agriculture, in agronomy, and he wrote a thesis, dissertation about Casavecchia, which is another indigenous varietal. And then I would add a bunch of other people who really believed in this. Even I would say the Campania region politicians. There were a bunch of these guys who helped us in reviving these grapes and enlisting these grapes in the national list of grapes in Italy.
But the two that seems to be have had more, how do you say, has remained more as also as creating monovarietal wine seems to be Pallagrello and Casavecchia, no?
Yeah, I mean, one of the very first wineries battling the Casavecchia was a family from Naples, and these guys were architects, and they bought a big piece. Actually, they owned a big piece of land in the Ponte Latone area, and they made this wine called Borbonico. They had a very renowned winemaker who helped us in making this wine. And so I think they've been the very first winery to battle the Casavecchia, and we're talking about the 70s. The winemaker was Pastore. That's his name, and it was at the time a very very committed winemaker, and he was a consultant of this winery. And so they used to do a very good job, and the company was called La Cervarecce. So I think they've been the very first ones to battle in the 70s the Casavecchia grape, and they used to blend it, with Aglianico, the red, and the white with Falanghina. So they used, because we know that Casavecchia, we can speak about that later, but Casavecchia is a pretty tannic wine. So you have to figure out, every single vineyard, every single vintage, what to do in order to direct, the strength of the grape.
So if we go over and talk more about the terroir and the soil where you are, where you have your vineyards, and
Yeah.
then we can also get into the grapes and the characteristics.
Okay, so I brought with me a sample of the soil. So this is volcanic soil. I'm
Okay.
gonna take one of these rocks out of the jar just to show you.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So most of the land in Campania underneath 300 feet is mainly volcanic.
Okay.
So this is a special kind of ash which came here in northern Campania 39,000 years ago during the eruption of Campi Flegrei. It's not lava because we are not on the foothill of Mount Vesuvius. We are not in the foothill of other volcanoes that we have all around Campania. You know, we have other four volcanic areas. Ischia
Yeah.
is another volcano. Then we have Vulture. Then we have Rocca Monfina, and then we have Vesuvius. So the area where we are and the ash that we got is the ash that we got from Campi Flegrei. So it's called fall ash. So we have
Mhm.
this kind of ash which came, you know, and spread all over Campania after the eruption because of the higher temperature of the ash, which went up on the air during the day, during the eruption, and then formed big clouds of ash, which
Okay.
moved during the night. And then, because of the lower temperature, they just collapsed. And where they collapsed, they just fell down and they
Okay.
covered the area where these big clouds were going. And this is the reason why this kind of ash is so brittle, is so fragile, and you find it in the mainly in the plateaus where the vineyards are above, you know, I would say 350 feet on the sea level. The, the, the you, you you don't really find this kind of ash which is so light that it has been dragged down the valleys, you know, and down the plateaus during throughout
Okay.
the years. Okay, so you can see on the map here. So you see, this is Campania region. So
Mm.
there are 5 different provinces. We are up north where you see Caserta. Okay, and you see that small green dot up north. So we are almost on the border with Benevento. And in that area, we have the volcanic soil, you know, at the altitude I was telling you about, and then
Mm.
above the hills, which are called the Monti Trebulani. And Monti Trebulani are, as you can see here, Anti-Appennini Campani. Monti Trebulani belong to the 7 different Anti-Appennini Campani that we have in Campania. So, for example, Amalfi Coast, it's one of those Anti-Appennini Campani, or Vesuvius, it belongs to the Anti-Appennini Campani, and Monti Trebulani, where we are. So, on the foothill of Monti Trebulani, we have the DOC Casavecchia di Pontelatone, where you can find the Casavecchia and the 2 Pallagrellos. So there are 8
Okay.
different communes, and they all share the same viticulture and vinification practices.
Okay.
So, and up on the hills, you have clay or limestone. Can you see this?
Yes, I can.
So this is a kind of whitish soil. And
Mm.
this, for example, is 1,200 feet on the sea level. It's on the foothill of Montefriento. Montefriento, one of those 5 hills which belong to the Monti Trebulani, which starts up north on the Massiccio Monte Maggiore is called, which is 3,000 feet on the sea level, and then it goes down to Caiazzo and Castel Campagnano, which faces Monte Taburno, which is another DOC area, pretty renowned here in Campania. And the Monte Taburno belongs to that chain of mountains where even the Partenio and the Picentini Mountains, where the Fiano and Greco is, are part of. So on these different soils, we make the Casavecchia and the two Pallagrellos. Then it depends on what kind of wine we make.
And how does it? What does it bring to the wines made with Pallagrello and Casavecchio? How does the soil influence?
Yeah. So it's not just the soil, of course. It's the, like we say, is the microclimate. Okay, the French define the microclimate as terroir.
Yes.
You know, so the limestone and the calcareous soil is it gives, I would say, more freshness, more acidic to the wine. The volcanic soil gives more, I would say, aromatic, and the wines are always rounder. They have this supple kind of taste. So I think the main difference is this. So the limestone and calcareous soil give more acidic. The wine are more straightforward, linear, while those coming from the volcanic soil are, I would say, they raise your palate, and they are able to lure your attention because of this kind of I would say round kind of taste.
So Vashti Crawford Robert is here. She has I think she manages the Friends in Wine Facebook group or something. So your friend Francesco was asking something. He asked, among the wines that you produce, which is your favorite and why?
So I don't have a favorite wine. I have favorite vintages.
Okay.
So I could mention a bunch of different vintages that I like. Let's, for example, mention the Trebulanum. Trebulanum for me was pretty special in 2001, 2007, 2010. And I think the next one is going to be 2007. Pallagrello Bianco, 2009, I think was an exceptional year. And I think 2019 will be the one that we'll be releasing next year is going to be good. And I think it's going to be exceptional. And maybe, 10 years have flown by. So, but this is what I think about my wines. So I would say once every 6-7 years, there's a vintage that I like among, a varietal. Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
I know it's not a lot, but I should encourage myself, but that's the way it is. And I'm not kidding about that.
There was another question from Giulio Fontana, and he wonders, I think you talked a bit about this just recently, but which variety fits better with the volcanic soil?
That's a good question. So, I would say Aglianico. I would say for us Aglianico, because Aglianico sometimes can be a little edgy and angular. So the tannins of Aglianico sometimes tends to be a little bitter, and they are not astringent as much as they are, edgy. They cut your palate.
Yeah, that's true.
We have tried, cultivating it on the volcanic soil and on clay and limestone, and volcanic soil gives pretty good results. So for sure, I would say Aglianico, it grows pretty well. And then I would say the second best is Casavecchia. So
Okay.
wherever you go in the area where we are, and most of the Casavecchia you find in the Ponte Latone area. So we said Ponte Latone is one of the 8 communes. On the communes which are southeast, which faces the Monte Taburno, you have more Pallagrello Nero. It's mainly Pallagrello Nero, then Pallagrello Bianco, and then Casavecchia. In the area, northern appellation, the Formicola, Liberi, Castel di Sasso, and Ponte Latone. So let's say the northern appellation, it's all the way around. It's more Casavecchia. And
Okay.
wherever the Casavecchia is grown on the volcanic soil, I think it does a pretty good job in terms of aromatic, in terms of phenolic ripeness, and maybe the acidic. It lacks a little acidic, but I would say for sure it always reach the ideal phenolic ripeness and the aromatic, especially with the Trebolanum, the color, the aromatic, it's always there, and it never betrays you. Yeah.
Interesting. I hope you're happy with the answer, Giulio. So if we go back to the terroir that we were talking about before, and do you want to say something more about that, or do
Yeah.
you want to?
Let me tell you this. We have 15 different wineries in the, I think, youngest appellation in Campania. So the DOC that was bestowed in I think 5 years ago. So the first wine was 2013 or 2014. I
Okay.
think 2013. So and that was the first wine that we could claim as DOC. 15 wineries, they are all doing a very good job. So I would say they are more or less split half and half between the northern side and the southern side. So northern side, we said 4 communes: Ponte Latone, Formicola, Castel di Sasso, and Liberi. And we have wineries like Il Verro in Formicola. Then we have up in Liberi, which is the Castel di Sasso, the area which goes down towards Dragoni. On Monte Cardillo, we have Sclavia. Then we have I viticoltori del Casavecchia. They do a very good job with the Casavecchia. And then going then we have Vigne Chigi is in Ponte Latone, in the center of Ponte Latone, and then going on the other side in southern appellation, we have Masseria Piccirillo, we have Cantine di Lisandro, we have Paola Riccio, and we have Vestini Campagnano, Terre del Principe. So maybe we got more. Davide Campagnano. So I think there are maybe 2-3 more down Calazia, Rao. Anyway, they all have amazing vineyards. I have had opportunity to visit them all, and I can promise you they have a pretty proper training system. Is more or less the same as Guyot. It's more or less the same distance between one plant and one row from the other, but the soils, they all differ one from the other.
Really?
I never ever found a soil which was the same. They all different one from the other. You have calcareous soil, you have volcanic, clay and limestone, and sandy soil. I mean, we have found so many different things, and of course you can easily figure out when it comes to the wines. The wines, of course, they differ, even though you find
Yeah.
always this red wine which links them all, but in the end they all have their own characteristic. So you never get annoyed when you come over in the area where we are, because you have diversity, which is the strength of the area where we are.
No, but I agree. I haven't tasted them all. I tasted a couple of them, and I agree. They're very different, all of them. Both the white and the red wines, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I of course I got my preferences. I got my favorite wines, not wineries, but wines, and I would say that the in the northern side, the wineries tend to make a better Casavecchia, and southern side they tend to make a better Pallagrello Nero. But that being said, this is a generalization
Okay.
which helps to to attract the attention of our consumer, but they all have a different profile, and whatever you find within the bottle, I can promise you it's so interesting. It's so different one from the other.
No, that's for sure. I mean, it's also an interesting area because it's as I said before, it's not that well known. I mean, certainly not abroad, and also I think in Italy, not many people know that there are so many wineries. So there's another question from another friend of yours, I think. If you think Campania expresses its true value in white or red wines?
That's a good question, and I want to salutare Francesco Scaramuzzo. He owns, I know this guy. He owns um, pretty interesting bar and one tasting bar in the Ponte Latone area. He has got a big, a pretty extended range of indigenous wines, and what he's trying to do is to represent in a proper way all the different areas and all the different wineries. So I invite you guys to go to Ponte Latone, in the main square of Ponte Latone, and go to Bar Venghe, where Francesco and his family, they will welcome you according to our southern protocol, which is Magna Grecia, hospitality. So he's one of the best people to do that. But going back to his question, I mean, is the market which has got the final word. The market right now is looking for whites from Campania. So I think all wineries, with no exceptions, are selling the whites with no matter what they do, but with no big efforts.
Yeah.
In order to sell the reds, it takes more time. Sometimes you gotta make some deals, and it's not easy. And since I like to visit wineries, I find more wine stored in the barrels, so more red wine stored in the barrels than white. Whites, it's pretty difficult to find, some leftover barrels. Let me tell you, pretty successful, the whites. Fiano, Greco, Pallagrello, Falanghina, and even on the Amalfi Coast, you have all the indigenous varietals there. Then you have the Biancolella in the island of Ischia. So I think, and even according to you know to what I've been drinking in the last few years, I think all the wineries have done a pretty good job, with with uh, with the whites. I'm not saying that the reds are not are not interesting. I mean, Aglianico and even Aglianico from Taurasi is so. I mean, it's an amazing wine, and they call it the Barolo of the South, and of course, it is the Barolo of the South. And
But
like we
also,
were saying on
it
our
is.
preview,
It's also
yeah,
very much.
sorry.
It is a Barolo del South, but it's also very much its own wine. So I don't know if it's actually a Barolo del South or if it's Aglianico in itself that has nothing to
Yeah,
do.
I totally agree. But it's a slogan.
I know, I
Because
know.
everybody knows Barolo.
Yeah,
But I'm sure that is the Aglianico is really striving, in order to be successful. It's not easy. It's not a good period, for Taurasi and even for the Reds in Campania. I don't know if I'm saying something which might not be, you know, uh, uh, something that the other winemakers could agree on. Um, but I'm just saying that reds are really good, but whites sell much better.
yeah, but there's also been a lot of work in the last few years to appreciate the whites, no, also abroad, internationally. So also a lot
I
of
think
friends I
it's even,
start to know about the Campania whites now. Before they were talking more about Friuli or Sicilian whites, but I think Campania has now the whites of Campania, which is I think is much better than many other white wines. So
I think the whites from Campania, they range among the best whites from Italy.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that because I'm a Campania producer. I'm saying that because I love to drink wines. So whenever I compare something coming from Friuli or Sicily or Toscana or Veneto, I never regret to be a wine producer from Campania. When I drink the red, sometimes I envy the other areas. But
true,
when it
true.
comes to whites, let me tell you, we have nothing, to to envy to any other areas in
Well, also
our.
because it's white wines made with native grapes. I think there's a lot of regions who makes a lot of white wine, but with Chardonnay or Sauvignon. Uh, but Campania makes native grapes white wines, and I think that's the strength, no?
Yeah, I think if you just pay attention to these, Campania maybe I'm not saying it's the only region, but it's one of those few regions in Italy where where only indigenous and varietals are grown. You
Yeah,
don't find uh, grapes, international grapes. You don't find it's pretty rare that you find grapes coming from the other regions. I'm not saying that they are not good. There are a bunch of wines which have been made out of international or varietals coming from, other regions which are
yeah,
so good. But Campania is so really focused on indigenous varietals coming,
yeah.
from a region.
True. So from here, do you want to talk more about some specific varieties, or do you want to talk about your wines?
I
You can
mean, whatever you want. I mean, I could talk about. I'm so proud about our new release. After 20 years, where we have never changed labels, we never added any other wines. So this is the very first year after 10 years of experimentation that we are releasing uh, a brand new wine. So this is Morrone. Morrone is 100% Pallagrello Bianco, which comes from up the hills. We are on the foothill of Mount Friento, 1,200 feet on the sea level. It's calcareous soil, and let me tell you that after 10 years, they've been experimenting these the grapes which were coming from this vineyard. We found extremely interesting data. For example, just to give you an idea, the pH that for us as winemakers, I don't want to annoy anyone, I don't want to bother anyone, but pH is so important to us.
Yeah.
And this year, if we're talking about 2020, you know, the 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 pH was 3.2, and I can promise you, for us here in Campania, it's a pretty good achievement. So this is a grape which tends to have a pretty high sugar content, which equals in alcohol, of course. Is never below 13 alcohol proof,
Okay.
but it has got a medium acidic. So up on the hills, we have gained one 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 gram of acidic. So it's always above 5 grams total grams acidic per liter. That I can promise you. Once again, don't want to bother anyone. For us is a pretty good goal that we have pursued during this year, and finally we have been kind of successful. So this is a grape which is so interesting. It has got a good aging potential up to 10 years. We're still drinking the 2009 vintage, which is still green, it's not oxidated, and it's still pleasant. So we are really focusing on the Pallagrello Bianco and on the aging potential of this grape. So we released the wine after 2 years, and Morrone is the vineyard. I was telling you about.
Yeah. That was
It's
in
written
the.
on the label. I
Yes.
think you guys can see that.
Yes. And what did I want to ask?
And yeah, you ask me questions.
Yeah, I forgot what I wanted to ask. But so which were the first wines you started out with? Was the Aglianico and Falangina, or when did you decide that you wanted to focus more on the? You said that you started in the 90s, but when did you start to focus more
Yeah.
on the?
So we planted the very first vineyard in 92. We bought the land in 91. And then in 98, after these after we experimented these different varietals, we decided to focus on the two Pallagrellos, the Casa Vecchia, on the Aglianico and Falangina. These are the 5 grapes that we have been working with. So in 99, we planted 8 hectares. And then in 2005, we planted other 4 hectares. And then in 2007, other 2 hectares. And then we went up to 20 hectares that we all have in the area of Ponte Latone.
Okay.
So we make 120,000 bottles out of those hectares, and those are the varietals that we make: Falangina Aglianico, Pallagrello Bianco, Pallagrello Nero, and Casa Vecchia. And we make what we call the Linea Michele Alois, which are 6 different wines, and then the Linea Alois, which is, we can define that as our crew wines, which is the Morrone that we have just released. And next year we will release the Riserva Trebulanum, so the Casa Vecchia Riserva, and the brand new wine Murella, which is going to be 100% Pallagrello Nero. They both are aged in large format casks, and for 2 years the Casa Vecchia, and 1 year and a half the Pallagrello Nero, then 1 year in the bottle, and we release the wines after 4 years. So next year we will be releasing the 2017 of Casa Vecchia, and the 2018 of Murella Pallagrello Nero.
Okay. For those, generally people want to know if you're in, are you organic, or do you do organic in the Caserta area?
Yeah, okay. So we are up on the hills. We are organic, but certified sustainable. So we, every single year, we get some funds from the region. They once in a while, every now and then, they come and check the soil. And so we are certified for all the vineyards that we have. But for the vineyards that we have up on the hills, we spray much less. So there are much less exposure to pathologies such as mildew and powdery mildew, and but we are not certified organic. We are certified sustainable.
Okay. So I was curious about another thing about you. I mean, so when did you decide that you wanted to go into the family wine business? Was it always something that you wanted to do, or did you do something else before and then come back?
Yeah. So I've been always in love with nature and the countryside, but I was forced, not by nature, but
Okay.
by a series of events in my life, to retire from what I was doing before and starting this new adventure.
Okay.
So, long story short, I started working full time in 2007.
Okay.
I used to work for our family business. My family, the Alois family, has always been involved in the silk business, making silks, jacquard
Oh, yeah,
fabrics.
I
I don't
love
know if
that.
you ever heard of this kind of technique. And
Yeah.
this comes from the heritage that we got from our ancestors, who have always been making fabrics here in the Salesio area, which is close to Caserta. Is small, is a close city, small village close to the royal palace of Caserta, where the Bourbon kings have created this new activity. And my family, which is, like we said in the very beginning, is a French family, came down south, was part of the Bourbon King's court, and they've always looked after the manufacturing plant.
Okay.
So I started in 2007 after we split with the extended family. So
Okay.
we were the sixth generation, 22 people involved in the in the company. We had kind of fights, but then we have been, I would say, smart and lucky at the same time to decide to stop fighting. And so we, just a few years before, we bought all the lands from our
Okay.
family. So we've got liquidated. We got the land, and in the land which was part, which was owned by the extended family, we started planting all these indigenous varietals. But the guy who really started this adventure is my father. Like we
Okay.
were saying, before starting this live action. So my father is really passionate about the vineyards. So when he retired, he's the one who planted the grapes in our experimental vineyard, and I just followed up what my father has created for us. So let's say he has he has he has plowed, the trail on which we are now walking.
True. So I think before we end this, I don't know. Do you want to say something? I opened the 2017, the Cunto. So do you want to say something? Why this wine is? What do you think about this wine?
Okay, 2017. I just drank it a couple of days ago with my wife. It's a pretty, I would say, the thing which comes to your mind as soon as you taste the wine is this spicy taste. It's a
Yeah.
pretty spicy wine. It's pretty linear. Tannins are not aggressive. You do feel them under the palate, but they
Yeah.
are
No,
soft
they're
enough,
nice. They're soft.
yeah,
Yeah.
not to bother your palate. But
No.
what is really, I think, overwhelmingly noticeable is this spicy taste.
Yeah.
which reminds me to a pink, um, the pink pepper. It
Yeah.
reminds me, to those kind of aromas.
No, no, I agree. I agree. Do you anything else you want to add about the wines? Otherwise, I was thinking we could end with, as people love food too, and Campania is one of those regions where you eat all the time. So if you would pair any of your wine with a specific dish from the Caserta area, what would it be?
So I have to mention mozzarella. It's not easy to pair a wine with mozzarella, but for sure, I cannot forget about one of the most well-known dishes and products that we make here in our province is water buffalo mozzarella. So
Sure.
I would pair a Pallagrello Bianco with a water buffalo mozzarella, and then I would mention, of course, the spaghetto col pomodorino fresco e basilico,
Ah,
and
that's true. That's true.
with something like that, I would pair a cunto. So we always mention big steaks, or pretty fatty dishes when we think about Reds from Campania. I
Yes.
would like to pair our cunto with a simple dish
Mhm.
like spaghetto mezza cottura o al dente with basil and fresh cherry tomatoes.
That sounds wonderful, I think. So there was another question from Ladislav, who is following my live streams very often now, so thank you. He was asking about that you said before that they control your soil, that you're certified sustainable, what they actually search for,
Yeah.
and if you can talk more about that.
Yeah. So what you do, the sustainability. So we get funds from the region and from AGEA. So what you do, you send soil, to to an institution, and of course, is you the one who choose the soil in which you have been cultivating, your grape. But then what they do every now and then, they just select a bunch of wineries, they come again, they ask you, where did you take the soil from? And so you say, there. They go again, they take the same soil, they go back and they compare what you sent with what they got.
Okay.
So, and this is the thing that they do. And we have been, I think, selected a couple of times in the
Okay.
last 50 years. So
Okay.
this is the kind of check that they do. They are pretty strict. I think they give easily funds to whoever asks for, but then at the same time they always check that whatever you say is right. And then
Okay.
besides that, of course, we have to declare every single year all the invoices that we have, from which we have, all the products that we bought, and we
Mm.
have to fill out um,
A
a bunch
form.
of paperworks where
Mm.
we declare what we have been bought, what we have used, and what is left over. Okay, and even for that they come every now and then and they check, if what you have declared is right or not. Let me just tell you, in the last, now it's lockdown. Before the lockdown, 1 week ago, we had 3 checks.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we had people coming from the different institutions, and they came to check, the tanks, the grapes, and the bottles.
Okay.
So a lady, for example, she came and she chose the wine that we had in stock, and the one which we had more. She took a couple of samples, and they went back and they checked, I think, a bunch of different things.
Okay.
So I think the region does a very good job, and they do a very good job even in helping you. Whenever you have a question, you call, they give you, all the information you are looking for.
Okay, so I hope you're happy with the answer, Ladislav. There were a couple of other people. I think they're friends too. Antonella, who says that the Alois wines are tradition and innovation.
Good. This is not a question, okay? It's a statement. So I can relax. I don't have to answer.
No. And then another one, Antonio Indovino, also says hello. I don't know if you know
Antonio
him.
Indovino is another friend of ours. He's a very renowned sommelier.
Okay.
Oh, this guy, he works in a wonderful place, in Castellammare. Is one of the best places we have. Indovino Talita, stava anche lui, in the golf club in Castellammare. And he's obsessed about indigenous varietals. So this guy has got a palate, he's pretty good. And we are really amazed about the work that he does in promoting all the indigenous varietals that we make in Campania. It's not just Pallagrello, but whatever is typical from the area.
Okay. So Ladislav says thank you, and I think we've gone on for an hour now. So I think, do you have anything you want to add? Anything you want to say about Alois that people should know? Otherwise, I think we can.
I think I'm okay.
Okay. We've been talking a lot about Caserta, Campania, Alois, Pallagrello.
But I made a big mistake because I forgot to fill up a glass of wine or at least of water, and so my mouth has been
dry.
Instead of watering is withering.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much for wanting to do this live stream with me. I think it's been fun, and I learned a lot of new things that I actually didn't know about the grapes and the terroir and so forth. So that was great. There was a lot of your friends. There was some of my international friends too, but they didn't ask many questions. But that's okay. I think we covered a lot of what we wanted to say. Let's see. Yeah. He makes a last comment. I'm in love with my region. Indigenous grapes. Okay, that sounds good.
You guys, I invite you guys to go to this place. It's an amazing place on the Gulf of Naples. You have Capri, just in front of you, and then you have all the Sorrento coast. You have Sorrento on your left-hand side, and you have Naples on your right-hand side.
Exactly. Okay, so thank you, Massimo. And if you want to stay on, I'm just going to close down the live.
Catarina, grazie molto e grazie per avermi invitato. Really appreciated that.
No, grazie a te. Grazie per tutti i vini that I will open slowly, bottle by bottle. And thank you everyone who listened in, and see you next Tuesday. Ciao.
Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.